What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Classic Octane. I am Taylor. So today we are hopefully going to go on a successful test drive of the C5Z06 drift car. If you've been following along with this series, I have only driven this car once before, and we did run into a bunch of problems, found a bunch of oil leaks, and numerous things we had to address. In the last video, I pulled this engine out and we completely went through everything. If you missed that one, I will throw a card up now to go check it out. This past week, I took a day, put it all back together, and happy to report that it took me maybe seven and a half hours, something like that, by myself to put it all back together. Only small issue I had was I didn't properly tighten a ground on this driver's side of the engine. That ground is actually for the fuel pump relay, so it was kind of intermittently working and not working, so it would start, run for a couple of seconds, and then die. But I've learned from owning one of these C5s in the past that if you have any kind of electrical problem like that, first thing you need to do is check all the grounds, and like 85% of the time it's just a ground wire that came loose or went bad or whatever. Fiberglass cars are notorious for bad grounds. So all that's buttoned up, so I'm gonna put you guys in the car. We're gonna start this thing up. I'll probably let it run in the driveway for just a little bit, check and make sure everything seems to be working properly, and then we're gonna go out and test drive. Happy to report, so far everything's going great. Oil pressure's 50 psi right now. Coolant temp 165. Battery voltage 14. I mean, everything's right where it should be. So the car didn't really give me any real trouble until I got a little bit further down this road, and then I started to have a little bit of issues then. So I'm just gonna keep cruising and we'll put this thing through its paces a little bit. If all goes well, I'd really like to feel this thing under full power, because I haven't yet, and I'm pretty excited about it, so keep cruising. See what a second gear pull feels like. She's a bit rowdy. Got my eyes watering. It always happens. Holy moly. That'll do it. That will do it. So I'm about 30 minutes or so into the test drive, and so far, no issues to report whatsoever. Great oil pressure. I mean, coolant temp 163. I mean, this thing is staying super cool. I went with just straight distilled water with a little bit of water wetter in it, since I'm in Texas and we rarely see below freezing, and that is actually much more efficient than coolant, and that seems to be the case. Battery voltage is good. I mean, everything's working great. Only issues I found, I do still need to get an alignment for sure. It's a little kind of darty. I also feel like the suspension's just pretty worn out with the amount of miles that are on this thing. This seat is incredibly worn out. I'm like gangster leaning, and the right side leans back just on its own, and the left side is like stiff. So I'm like, so a good aftermarket kind of racing seat is 100% on the list. Other than that, I mean, it's been great. Actually not even getting that clutch chatter that I was getting the first time. I don't remember if I told you guys or not, but I inspected the pilot bearing before I reinstalled the clutch, and the whole inside of the pilot bearing was completely like destroyed. There was no bearing in there, there was nothing. So that could have been part of the issue too, is the input shaft of the torque tube could have just been kind of bouncing around in there because there was no support on the other side. So it's a really good thing we pulled this engine out for sure. So I'm about to pull onto a road that has a pretty fast speed limit. So, you know, we might just have to test it, see how quickly we can get up to speed here. Well, as you can see, we made it home safe. So that was a fantastic test drive. I mean, only issue I had is after I stopped to get gas, the check engine light did pop on. I just ran the codes. We have one for a knock sensor, so I'll have to see if one of our wires got pulled or something like that. And the other one was for, I believe it was an injection, something like that. So I'll have to look into that as well. It wasn't seemingly making a difference as far as how the car was running, but we want to make sure those check engine lights don't pop on, because I do actually need to pass a emissions inspection with this car, and if the check engine light's on, you will automatically fail. So we want to make sure we get that sorted before I can go and get this thing inspected. But the big test is under here, and I'm happy to report we don't have a single drop of any fluid, which, if you remember from the last test drive video, this thing was like the Exxon Valdez, just pouring oil everywhere. So absolutely awesome. So with the car running and driving like it should now, we move on to a couple of other issues that still need to be addressed before this thing can really be taken to like a drift event. One of them is we are still missing a muffler. That is causing two problems. One, it's obnoxiously loud. Two, and the more important issue is that with our rear tub still damaged, tons of exhaust was kind of coming back into the cabin, and it was definitely wouldn't want to drive it for any long amount of time that way. So we need to get either a replacement titanium muffler or a complete new kind of setup axle back for this car. We also do need to figure out some sort of fix for that rear tub, whether we just fiberglass it, whether we figure out some other way to seal it. I would like to have that sealed up before we do any kind of event with a car, just because I don't want exhaust or a bunch of tire smoke coming directly into the cabin through that broken piece. The driver's seat 100% has to be addressed before we can do any kind of real driving. You see how much that thing flexes and moves. I mean, that's a joke. So those are the things that need to be addressed for sure. The want to do's on this car is still, I want to do a hydraulic handbrake. I still have the angle kit to install, and probably a steering wheel to go alongside the seat. Suspension is still one of those things that's yet to be determined. It was kind of floaty, and it does feel like it's decently worn out, but I will probably hold off on that just because it is a bit cost prohibitive right now. But we do need to at least lower this thing. It is like full monster truck spec right now, and these cars are completely adjustable from the factory. So in the next video you see will most likely be lowering it and angle kit install while I wait and kind of order some of those other parts. Well, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I'm going to go ahead and order some of those parts. We have a bit of time before the first drift event I'm going to try and go to. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's in June. So there's a group here called Club Loose Texas, which is who I'm going to try and run with. They do events every single month, but they are on a new go-kart track, and they have to alternate between like beginner drivers and then the experienced drivers. So each month they kind of alternate back and forth. The next beginner driver event, I believe, is in April, but unfortunately it's a weekend I'm going to be out of town, so I'll miss that one, which means the next beginner one isn't until June. So we got some time to get the car sorted, but I want to get all those parts and stuff on the way so I can at least enjoy the car on the street in the meantime, put it through its paces, do some testing before we actually take it all the way down to an event. So I appreciate you guys watching. I know the Corvette content isn't for everyone. We will be jumping right back onto the BMW project, I would assume, in the next video, so I'll see you then.